Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight we've got a collection of terrifying Reddit stories that'll make you think twice about the dark. Huge thanks to all the authors for sharing their stories. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss any of our horror content. Grab your blanket, turn down the lights, and let's get into some terrifying Reddit horror stories.
I used to think the worst thing about trying to get into law school was the competition, the sleepless nights, the LSAT prep books stacked like bricks on my desk, the quiet panic that everyone around me was smarter, faster, and already connected. I was wrong. The worst part was realizing that one professor had the power to decide who deserved to move on. Professor James taught constitutional law, one of those classes everyone warned you about. He was brilliant, sharp, and terrifying in the way only someone completely confident in their authority can be. He never raised his voice. He never needed to. When he called on you, the room went silent, like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. By the end of the semester, I was doing well. My grades were solid. My test scores were competitive. But it wasn't enough. A reference from Professor James would change everything. He was the most respected faculty member on campus. Every student he endorsed was accepted into the best law schools in the country. He gave one reference per year. I understood what that meant. So I did what I had to. I visited his office hours constantly. I built rapport. And when I ran into classmates heading his way, I'd casually mention that he had left early. It worked, until it didn't. One afternoon, I ran into a classmate named Robert outside his office. I told him Professor James had emailed me saying he wouldn't be holding office hours. Robert frowned. He said, "That's strange. He specifically asked me to stop by." Before I could respond, I saw Professor James approaching. He tapped Robert on the shoulder and walked past me without a glance. Robert smirked as he followed him. My stomach dropped. The next morning, after class ended, Professor James stopped beside my desk. He said, "We need to talk in my office. Half an hour." The student next to me whispered congratulations. My heart sank. When I entered his office, Professor James was already watching me. He pointed to the chair. "You've been told you've been informing students about my office hours," he said calmly. "I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking." He smiled. "Nothing to apologize for. I admire ambition. You want my reference, and you know how selective it is." I nodded. "I run an additional evaluation, very private." "How does it work?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair. "A game," he said. "One designed to teach you what the law actually is." As I left, he added one final detail. 6 a.m. tomorrow. I barely slept. When I arrived at his office at 5:52 a.m., the door was already open. Professor James sat behind his desk, a yellow legal pad in front of him. "Sit." 2 minutes later, Robert walked in. He stopped when he saw me, then smiled tightly and took the seat across from mine. The third student arrived last, a woman from our class I barely recognized. She avoided eye contact. Professor James finally looked up. "You are here because each of you has demonstrated a willingness to bend rules when it benefits you. Some of you did so knowingly. Others did so thinking no one was watching." His eyes flicked to me. "This evaluation will consist of 3 rounds. Each round will test your understanding of the law, not as it is written, but as it is practiced." He slid 3 envelopes across the desk. "Once opened, participation is mandatory." Robert laughed nervously. "This is a joke, right?" Professor James smiled. "No, this is your future." He handed each of us a paper. "You will not discuss this game. You will complete each task within 24 hours. Under no circumstances will police be involved." The woman signed without hesitation. Robert followed. I skimmed the page. An NDA, airtight and unforgiving. Then signed. Professor James smiled. "Well done, my pupils."
Robert scoffed out a nervous chuckle. The woman still sat still, but I could see a smile creeping under her hair. Professor James then exclaimed, "The first round will begin right now. Best of luck. Also, please abide by the rules. I will be watching." I opened my envelope on the walk home. Round 1. Intent. The task was simple. Vandalize a property. That night, I pulled on an old Halloween mask and slipped into the quiet streets. I chose a small car wash on the edge of town. My hands shook as I sprayed 2 words across the wall. Mens rea. I was turning to leave when a black SUV rounded the corner. The window rolled down. A camera flashed. Once. Twice. Then the SUV drove away. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Round 1 complete. That was when I realized the game had already been watching me. I headed to Professor James's office early the next morning. He handed me the second envelope. "Excellent work. Best of luck on the next round." As I left, I saw Robert pacing at the end of the hall. "Don't open it," he warned. "The next round is just fucked up." I smirked. "Trying to limit competition, huh?" He shook his head, holding back tears. "No, this isn't a game. It has real consequences." I reassured him he didn't have to participate. "You don't understand," he shouted. "Everything I worked for is gone. The professor controls admissions completely." I opened the second envelope as soon as I got home. Round 2. Silence. Task: steal Robert's laptop and destroy all evidence of the game. I waited outside his dorm until he stepped out, frantic and pacing. I smashed the window, slipped inside, and grabbed his laptop and the envelopes. I left quickly, careful not to be seen. Before I left, I saw the same black SUV driving off. Back home, I destroyed the laptop, burned the first envelope, and held the second one in my hands. Curiosity and dread shot through me. Robert had been tasked with obstruction, planting evidence against another student to remove them from the competition. Buzz. Round 2 complete. A text followed. Round 3 will start in 1 week, 3 a.m. Address attached. The next day at class, Robert was missing. The woman sat in the back, hands over her face. After the lecture, Professor James announced casually, "Class, one of your fellow students, Robert, is apparently missing. Let's hope he's just on a bender. If you have any information, refer it to the school or county police." My heart sank. I knew. The professor had made sure consequences were met. I caught up to the woman afterward. "Hey, sorry, I never caught your name." "Please leave me alone," she interrupted. "We shouldn't be talking. This isn't a game anymore. Something bad happened last night, and we both know it." I stopped in my tracks as she walked off into the distance. A week passed. Robert was never seen again. The news called it a drug binge, an unstable student who trashed his dorm and vanished. His parents pleaded on television. The university released a statement expressing concern. Professor James continued teaching as usual. I tried to tell myself I wasn't responsible, but ignorance didn't change the truth. I had played the game. I had followed the rules. Round 3 came on a rainy night. The address led me more than an hour off campus, down a winding dirt road swallowed by trees. When I arrived, a tall man in a black suit waited beside my car. His face was hidden behind a distorted rabbit mask. "Follow me," he said. He led me into a barn illuminated from within. Rows of people sat in silence, all wearing animal masks, their attention fixed on the center of the room. Across from me stood the other student. Her head was down, her hands trembled. The doors slammed shut. Professor James stepped forward, holding a microphone. "Welcome," he said warmly. "Tonight's evaluation concludes. Round 3, the final verdict." A knife clattered onto the floor between us. The crowd leaned forward. The woman looked at me, tears streaking her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. She lunged. Everything after that felt unreal. Noise, movement, shouting. I remember the guards blocking the exits. I remember the crowd cheering. When it was over, she lay motionless on the ground. No one screamed. Professor James nodded, satisfied. I received my acceptance letter a week later. Top program, full recommendation, no conditions. I graduated at the top of my class. I work in criminal law now. I win cases. People trust me. Last night, I received a text from an unknown number. Final verdict delivered. Prepare your own evaluations. I haven't slept since. I live with one roommate. I'll call her Jenna for privacy purposes. We've been friends since college and moved in together about 6 months ago. Overall, things are fine. We split chores evenly, get along well, belong to the same social circles, work in similar fields, and usually spend time together without any tension. We're close enough that moving in together felt like a natural next step, not a risk. About 2 months ago, Jenna started sleepwalking. The first time it happened, I didn't think much of it. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Our floors creak a lot, so I assumed she was just going to the bathroom or to the kitchen for water. I stayed in bed and waited for the noise to pass. A few nights later, it happened again, except this time the footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom door. I remember lying there, half asleep, waiting for them to move on. They didn't. Eventually, I opened my door and saw her standing directly in front of it. She wasn't reaching for the handle or looking around. She was just standing there, facing my door like she'd been waiting. I asked if she needed something. She didn't respond. Her eyes were open but unfocused, like she was looking through me instead of at me. After a few seconds, she turned around and walked back to her room without saying a word. The next morning, I brought it up casually. She looked genuinely confused and said she didn't remember getting up at all. Then she laughed it off and told me she's always been a sleepwalker, especially when she's stressed. I didn't have any reason not to believe her. It was strange, but it didn't feel threatening. Since then, it's been happening a few times a week. What started to bother me was the consistency. She doesn't wander the apartment. She doesn't go into the kitchen or the bathroom. She always stops outside my door. Sometimes she stays there for only a few seconds. Other times it feels like minutes. I've tried pretending to be asleep. I've tried clearing my throat or shifting in bed. Nothing changes until she decides to leave. I finally told her it was making me uncomfortable. I asked if she could see a doctor or at least close her door at night so she wouldn't wander. She got defensive and said I was being unfair, that sleepwalking isn't something she can control and that I shouldn't be making her feel bad about a medical issue. Last night was different. I woke up around 3 a.m. and immediately knew she was there. She was closer than usual, so close I could see the shadow of her feet under the doorframe. I could hear her breathing on the other side. I didn't open the door this time. My heart was already racing. Instead, I asked quietly through the door, "Jenna, are you awake?" She answered immediately, "Yes." There was no hesitation, no grogginess, just a calm, clear response. I froze. I asked her why she was standing there. She said, "You weren't supposed to hear me yet." I told her to go back to her room or I'd call someone. My voice was shaking by then. She didn't respond right away. She just stood there, silently, for a moment that felt too long. Then she walked away. This morning, she acted completely normal. She made coffee, talked about work, and asked if I wanted to hang out later. When I confronted her, she swore she'd been asleep all night. She accused me of trying to control her behavior and said that insisting she did things she couldn't remember was gaslighting her. I told her I was going to install a lock on my door. She got upset and said that makes her feel accused and unsafe, and that I'm treating her like a threat instead of a roommate with a medical condition. She hasn't spoken to me since. Honestly, I don't know what to think anymore. I'm exhausted. I'm second guessing my own memory, and I dread going to sleep. All I know is that tonight I'm locking my door, and I'm scared of how she'll react when she notices.
Update. I didn't expect my first post to get as much attention as it did. I posted it mostly to get it out of my head and maybe hear that I wasn't overreacting. I read every comment, even the ones that sounded a little conspiracy theory-ish. I wish I'd listened more closely to the people telling me to leave. To answer the most common question, yes, I installed the lock the same day. I didn't tell Jama ahead of time. I waited until she left for work, drove to the hardware store, and bought the simplest deadbolt I could find. I'm not particularly handy, but adrenaline does wonders for motivation. By the time she got home, it was done. She noticed immediately. She stopped in the hallway, stared at my door, and asked, "Why did you change it?" I told her I just wanted privacy and to feel safer sleeping. I tried to keep my tone light, reasonable. She stared at the lock for a long moment, longer than felt normal, then laughed a little too sharply and said I was being paranoid. That night, I took commenters' advice and put a chair under the doorknob, wedged tight against the floor. I also moved a heavy storage bin full of old Halloween costumes in front of the door. I planned an escape route in my head, out the window, onto the fire escape, down to the street. This felt like overkill, but I wanted to say I honestly tried everything you all suggested. A lot of you mentioned trying to record these encounters, but that still felt like too much. So I settled for charging my phone to 100% and sleeping with it in my hand just in case. I still woke up around 3 a.m. I didn't hear footsteps this time. I just knew. Something was different. The air felt pressed, like before a storm. I stared at the door, waiting. Then I heard it, a soft sound, almost like fingertips brushing the wood. There wasn't any knocking, no scratching, just contact. I held my breath. Then, very quietly, from the other side of the door, Jana said my name. She didn't sound confused. She didn't sound asleep. She sounded annoyed. I didn't answer. The chair didn't move. The lock didn't rattle. After a few minutes, she walked away. The next morning, Jana was furious. She accused me of changing things without talking to her and said the lock made her feel unsafe in her own home. She asked me why I was acting like she was dangerous. When I reminded her of what happened the night before, she went pale and said I was doing it again, that I was putting things in her head and making her question herself. Maybe some of you are right, and she is the one gaslighting me. She asked me if I was sleeping at all. That question stuck with me. I don't know anymore. Since then, things have escalated in smaller, stranger ways. Jana has started waking up exhausted, with bruises she can't explain. Doors are sometimes open in the morning that I know I closed. This morning, I woke up to find my bedroom light on, even though I always turn it off. I haven't seen her outside my door again, but sometimes, when I lay awake, I swear I hear her pacing the hallway, back and forth, like she's measuring distance. I'm looking for a new place. I really am. But every time I try to imagine leaving, my chest tightens in a way I can't explain, like something is wrong with the idea itself. Tonight, I'm keeping the lock, and the chair, and the bin. I don't think she likes that. Final update. I finally did it. I packed my bag, left the apartment, and told myself that was enough. I told myself that distance would fix whatever was happening between Jana and I. I repeated this mantra over and over again the entire drive to my friend's place, like saying it might make it true. But after what happened last night, though, I don't think moving out is the solution I hoped it would be. I keep trying to remember when I actually fell asleep, and I can't. There's no clear break in my memory. Just a blur, like someone smeared the edges of the evening and morning together. I didn't wake up to footsteps or breathing this time. I dreamed. In the dream,
I was standing in the hallway outside my bedroom, facing my own open doorway. My legs felt tired in a way they never do in dreams, heavy and sore, like I'd already been standing there for a long time. The lock was gone, the chair and bin were gone. It was like my efforts to barricade my door never existed. I realized from somewhere beyond the threshold of my open door, I could hear breathing. My breathing. Slightly delayed, like it didn't quite belong to me anymore. Behind me, someone said my name. I turned and saw Jenna. She looked wrong. Not monstrous, not possessed, just exhausted. She was pale. Her eyes were ringed dark, wide and glossy, like she hadn't slept in days. She looked scared, not angry, not confused, but scared in a way that felt urgent. She told me I wasn't supposed to be out here, that it wasn't time yet, that I needed to go back. Her voice shook, like she was trying very hard not to raise it. I tried to push past her. That's when it turned physical. She grabbed my arm. I shoved her. We collided into the wall, hard enough to knock the air out of me. I remember thinking, even in the dream, how strong she felt, how desperate she was. I remember screaming at her to let me go, to get out of my way. She was shouting something too, but I couldn't quite hear it, like she was trying to talk over rushing water or through a thick barrier. I woke up. I was on my bedroom floor. My door was open. My arm ached. When I looked down, there were deep, finger-shaped bruises blooming around my wrist. My shoulder throbbed. My throat felt raw, like I'd been yelling for a long time. I staggered into the kitchen. Jenna was already there. She looked at me and immediately burst into tears, the kind that hit all at once, like she'd been holding them back for too long. She had the same bruises, same wrist, same shape, same color. She said she dreamed we were fighting, that she woke up standing in the hallway with her hands raised like she'd been pushing against something heavy. She asked me, very quietly, what I'd been doing before I went to sleep. I didn't know how to answer. We haven't spoken much since. I'm staying with a friend now. Jenna didn't try to stop me. Before I walked out, she said, "If you start waking up outside your room again, don't come back here." I asked her what she meant. She just shook her head and said, "I can't keep doing this." She didn't sound angry. She sounded tired. I keep telling myself that leaving was the right choice. I'm writing this from my friend's couch. I haven't slept yet. I don't know if I will. The apartment is quiet, unfamiliar, and somehow that makes it worse. Every small sound feels like it's waiting for something else to follow it. I've been killing time on my phone, deleting apps I don't use, when I notice the step counter I don't remember downloading. Last night, between 2:47 and 3:12 a.m., it logged over 1,000 steps. I can't remember leaving the room. I don't know where I went, and there's no one standing in front of the door to stop me now.
I don't know what this thing is or why it chose me. All I know is that it showed up one night during a thunderstorm. The first time it happened, I was watching a movie in the dark as the rain pounded against the roof. I had a bowl of popcorn in hand and a cold beer on the table beside me. A bolt of thunder here and there would cause me to jump, but aside from that, I was enjoying my night in. Until I heard the knocking. A particularly loud clap of thunder had startled me, sending popcorn tumbling to the ground. "Storm," I muttered, stooping to clean up the mess. And then I stopped in my tracks. Every muscle in my body tensed. Knock, knock, knock. It was faint, barely perceptible, but I could have sworn that it was there. I paused the movie and strained my ears, listening for any further disturbances. And there it was again. Knock, knock, knock. I crept over to the door, trying to remain as silent as possible. The knocking continued, louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. Dread coursed through my veins. No one should have been there. The nearest neighbors were miles away, and the rain was coming down in sheets. I swallowed my fear and gathered the courage to call out to whoever was on my porch. "Hello, is someone out there?" Part of me didn't expect to receive a response, but I got one, and it was more unsettling than I could have ever imagined. "Alan, it's your mother. Please let me in." I froze. It sounded exactly like her. But that couldn't have been Mom. She'd been dead for 13 years. The voice called again, more desperate this time. "Alan, please let me in. It's cold, so cold. It hurts. You're an awful son, leaving your poor old mother in the freezing rain like this. Alan, open the door." The knocking started again, louder than before, more insistent. I stumbled backward, feeling as if the house was closing in around me. This couldn't be happening. It wasn't possible. The knocking turned to pounding, hard, booming blows that rattled the photographs on the walls. Then, just as they reached the sickening crescendo, the knocks at the door just stopped. The only sound outside was that of the unrelenting rain. I waited, breath hitched, for something to happen. And then it spoke. "I expected better from you, Alan." I heard something lumber away, something big. I couldn't take my eyes off the door as the footsteps were drowned out by the storm. I never phoned the police about the incident. Response times are slow this far out. I didn't need them snooping around my property anyway. I was hoping that it would be an isolated occurrence, one of those odd events that I could write off as some sort of auditory hallucination. But then, it happened again. 2 weeks had passed since the first incident. In the following days, I'd found no evidence that what I'd experienced was real. Plus, it had rained since then, so I thought I was in the clear. Maybe I dreamt it all. But when that voice returned, I knew that it wasn't all in my head. It was storming again, hard. The forecast called for 3 days of non-stop showers. I found myself sitting in my living room, watching a TV show. On a commercial break, I stood to grab another beer from the refrigerator. And then I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. I stopped in my tracks. My blood turned to ice as my eyes fell to the door. Knock, knock, knock. I was horrified at what I saw next. The doorknob began to turn. The realization hit me like a bucket of cold water. I hadn't locked the front door. I raced across the foyer, feet slapping the hardwood. I covered the distance as fast as I could, praying that I would make it in time. With one final burst of momentum, I lunged forward and locked the deadbolt. The doorknob jiggled a few more times before it stopped moving. And then the laughing started. It was my mother's voice. The thing at my door cackled like a witch, its high-pitched giggles tearing through the night. I didn't want this to happen. Not again. When it spoke, all the color drained from my face. "Alan, Alan, I know you're there. Won't you be a dear and let me in?" I didn't respond. I stood, staring at the door, willing the voice to go away. The doorknob jiggled again, harder this time. "Alan!" It spat my name out, quick and sharp, like a tasted foul. I didn't play into its game. I decided then and there that my best option was not to engage. Instead, I went around the house, ensuring that every door and window was locked down tight. When I returned to the foyer, the voice had gone silent. I downed the remainder of my beer and tossed the empty in the trash. I'd had enough for one night. All I wanted was to go to sleep and forget that I'd ever heard the voice in the first place. I considered turning the TV off, but decided against it. If that thing was still outside, I didn't want to tip it off that I wasn't in the living room anymore. I went through my nightly routine before tucking myself under the covers. I shut my eyes and tried to sleep, but I couldn't. Something wasn't right. It felt like I was being watched. I lay in the darkness, my eyes glued to the window.
curtains obscured all but a thin sliver. I couldn't see if anyone was out there, not with how dark it was. But somehow I knew. I knew that thing was outside my window, watching me as I slept. Crash! A bolt of lightning suddenly illuminated the night sky, along with a sickly yellow eye staring through my curtains. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night. I didn't even try. I returned to my armchair in front of the TV, where the curtains covered the windows completely. I didn't hear another peep out of the thing for the rest of the night, not one word, but I could feel its presence until sunrise. I was paranoid about locking the doors for a long time after that. It was automatic. Every time I returned home, I'd check that each door in the house was secured. I wasn't taking any chances. Months passed by without incident. I was on high alert with each hard rain. But eventually, my paranoia subsided and I let my guard down. I think that's what it wanted, for me to get sloppy. I was jolted awake one night by a booming thunderbolt. It was raining again, coming down sideways. That was strange. I hadn't remembered rain in the forecast. I sighed, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. I needed to make sure the door was locked, just for my peace of mind. My feet touched the ground and I felt a searing pain shoot through my ankle. I immediately pulled my legs back up. The wound was dripping blood. A bolt of lightning lit up the room. I glanced down to find a clawed, gnarled hand grasping at the air. I cannot describe the amount of fear I felt as my mother's voice drifted from below my bed. "Thank you, Alan. Thank you for letting me in." I called the police. They're on their way, but with the storm and the distance to my house, I don't know how long I'll have to wait. The thing using my mother's voice keeps whispering to me, coaxing me to join it. I think it's toying with me. "Come here, Alan. I have something for you. Such a nice boy. Help your poor mother up. I love you, Alan. Please, come lay with me for a while." I don't know what this thing is, or why it's mimicking my mother, and I'm afraid that I'll be dead before I find out. Wow, I don't know about you, but that gave me chills. Huge thanks again to all the authors who shared their stories. Your creativity keeps us up at night. If you liked tonight's video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next scary story session. Drop a comment below and tell me which story freaked you out the most, or if you've had an experience like this yourself. Stay safe, keep the lights on, and I'll see you in the next one.